Alright guys, I'm out here walking around. We're back to Hater on the Run videos up in this piece. Now there was a video that I made a few days ago that I didn't upload, but because I have new opinions now, I figured I'd just remake it for you guys, you know what I'm saying? Because that's how I am. I'm a giver as well as a hater, you know what I'm saying? So today's video is going to be about our good friend Tony Khan and basically how he doesn't understand anything about wrestling, and my personal opinion, anything about business really, but certainly nothing about the business of wrestling. So without further ado, cucks, let's get to today's video, which is Tony Khan sucks, alright? And that this AEW New Japan partnership is going to amount to absolutely nothing. No one's going to give a rat's ass. Let's get started. First of all, let's start with the borderline basic analysis here, alright? So, as all of you know, Dave Meltzer, he obviously favored New Japan for a long time. You know, I think for the 20 years or some bullshit, there was no 5-star match, according to this guy, in the world of wrestling, right? So, basically, during the entire careers of The Rock, Stone Cold, Triple H, Taker, you know what I mean? Shawn Michaels, Kurt Angle, these are just some of the legends. Sting, some of the legends, Christian Cage, you know what I'm saying? Edge, these are some of the legends, the Hardy Boys, you know what I'm saying? Some of the legends, the Dudley Boys, you know what I mean? So these are some of the people that, according to Dave Meltzer, have never had a 5-star match, In other words, all of Shawn Michaels' matches are not good enough to get 5 stars, but of course, Andrade and Johnny Gargano have a 5-star match. I mean, that goes to tell you what Dave Meltzer thinks, right? He thinks that the best match in WWE history, basically, or the last 20 years, was Andrade versus Johnny Gargano, and there was an Adam Cole match in there as well, right? So these guys, we're led to believe that Andrade versus Johnny Gargano in a throwaway NXT takeover is better than, let's say, Shawn Michaels versus anybody, but Shawn Michaels versus Kurt Angle, Shawn Michaels versus Undertaker, hell, even Shawn Michaels versus Rey Mysterio on that one Raw tribute to Eddie Guerrero. So obviously, Dave Meltzer was very, very highly biased towards New Japan, right? And Japanese wrestling in general, but mostly New Japan. So you had all these jabrones in there, like Kenny Omega, Okada, also known as Okado from TNA, getting 5-star, 6-star, even 7-star matches, right? Now, when AEW started, right, all of the awards of that bullshit publication started inking their ways towards AEW, right? So, for example, Promotion of the Year for several years in a row was New Japan, right? Promoter of the Year was Guido and Jado or whatever from New Japan. Now it's Tony Khan, right? Or Booker of the Year, whatever, right? The point being that there is a cannibalistic relationship between AEW and New Japan necessarily, right? What I mean by that, for all the dumb ones here, is this, right? When New Japan loses someone to AEW, they lose the prestige that comes with that person, namely Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks, all right? But also, and Adam Page to a lesser degree, but also, perhaps more importantly, they lose the prestige of being the quote-unquote #1 company for the Smarks, right? Now the #1 company for the Smarks is AEW. So, having a partnership between two smarky companies is like adding 0 with 0. You still get 0, you know what I'm saying? Number 1. 2. New Japan has had these partnerships in the past with other companies, namely TNA, right? For a long time, they've had a working relationship with TNA to the point where Kurt Angle was their IWGP champion. They didn't recognize them, then they recognized them. It is what it is. Brock Lesnar was in New Japan as well, right? He had a match with Kurt Angle. You see what I'm saying? That's a match that should be selling pay-per-views left and right. Of course it didn't because nobody knew about it, right? But the point is, there was one Wrestle Kingdom when there was several TNA people on the card, right? They had Kurt Angle versus Nakamura, I think. They had a 6-man tag. The Dudley Boys were there. Christian was there. They had actual stars join New Japan, right? Under their working relationship with TNA. Now, you mean to tell me that led to absolutely nothing? It didn't boost TNA's ratings. To be fair, nobody knew about New Japan back then. So it was almost oh, Christian Cage is wrestling some jabron that nobody knows about, like Yoshihashi, who cares, right? But the facts are what the facts are. For the longest time, Kurt Angle, Christian Cage, the Dudleys, anyone that was involved in Wrestle Kingdom, right? That was the biggest audience they wrestled in since their days in WWE. And it was probably bigger than most of the arenas in WWE as well, because Wrestle Kingdom draws 50,000 people. You know what I mean? It's a big arena. The Tokyo Dome is a big arena, motherfuckers, because I've been there and I've seen it. You know what I'm saying? It's huge. So, what I'm saying is this, though. What boost did TNA get by having this relationship with New Japan? Nothing. And TNA was different. They had actual stars. So they could have gotten the boost of the Smarks, right? The Smarks could have been like, oh my God, like, oh, Tanahashi was better than everybody I've ever seen in WWE and TNA. And they could have then watched New Japan. But it didn't do a boost. Or more importantly, New Japan fans could have been like, oh my God, like all three of them could have been like, oh my God, I never heard of TNA, but it's complete overlap, right? New Japan and AEW have complete overlap as well. There is not one person in the world, right, that is an American that watches New Japan and does not watch AEW, or a Canadian, or a European. There is not one person that only watches one or the other, right? There's of course Japanese people who don't give a rat's ass about AEW, but that's about it, right? Everyone else that watches AEW watches New Japan. So no new eyes are going to come as a result of this partnership, number one. Two, let's get to it. Dream matches, right? First of all, the state of New Japan right now, in my opinion, is very, very weak. Now, I don't watch it religiously or anything like that, but I do know that Okada sucks. It's simple as that. The state of AEW is also way worse than the state of TNA was in its prime. Because instead of Kurt Angle, Christian Cage, and the Dudleys, you have the Young Cucks, Kucky Omega if he makes it back, which he should, just for this show, and like Adam Page and, Adam Cole and Keith Bearcat Lee, the usuals, right? So as a result, you're not going to have these great dream matches. You can probably finagle a dream match here and there, like they tried to present like Minoru Suzuki versus John Moxley as a dream match. And while I don't agree, I could see why they're saying like it's supposed to be these two tough guy characters fighting each other. And people were chanting, this is awesome, when they were just trading slaps, or when Minoru Suzuki was doing the same thing with Samoa Joe. They're just slapping each other in the face, and people are saying, this is awesome. What's awesome about it? They're just slapping each other. It's not entertaining, you know what I mean? It's entertaining in the premise of like, oh, these two guys, like neither of them will back down, but it's like, who cares about that? I want to see an actual good match, right? So there might be a match here and there that they can finagle, right? But a lot of them are not going to be dream matches. Like Young Bucks versus whoever the New Japan Tag Team Champions are. It's not a dream match because the Young Bucks were in New Japan for a long time. Same thing with Kenny Omega. If you do Kenny Omega versus Naito or Kenny Omega versus Okada, who cares, right? We've already seen that 1,000 times. But there are a few. You could do, for example, Daniel Bryan versus Okada, right? A lot of people would cream their pants. Not me, I wouldn't give a shit. But a lot of people would cream their pants. You could do like Samoa Joe, for example, versus like, I don't know, Hiroki Goto, for those of you that know him, right? You can do, there's a few, like, I wouldn't say dream matches, but good matches, right? Matches that people would want to see and would want to talk about. But that's it. Then after that, what do you do, right? You can't build actual storylines across the brands because one brand operates in Japan and in Japanese, and those people don't speak English, and vice versa. You know what I'm saying? So it's not easy to do this, right? Maybe you can have Michael Nakazawa get a push finally, because I think he speaks both. But here you go. The point I'm trying to make is that this relationship is not symbiotic, it's not complementary, it is cannibalistic, right? If both of these promotions have a show on the same day, each promotion will suffer in viewership because people will be split between one or the other. It's not like, for example, if New Japan had an event the same day as, like, I don't know, fucking Dragon Gate, right? Where people are like, all right, it's two distinct audiences, and people are not going to... There would still be some cannibalism there. There's cannibalism with anything. Basketball and hockey have, there's an overlap in the audience there too. But you understand what I'm saying, right? So, furthermore, it's a little too late, in my opinion, right? Now, New Japan, as far as I'm concerned, is part of this rebuilding phase, right? They're trying to, I don't know, capture like a new demographic, right? They're trying to, create new stars and things of that nature, but they're not having much success. I mean, like, unless you think that the great Okan is like the next big thing, which he very well might be in New Japan because New Japan operates on that level. But you understand what I'm saying, right? They're recycling their old guys here and there, but generally speaking, they have all these new people that nobody knows about and nobody cares about. And all of a sudden, people like El Desperado are like champions. He was like a lackey in like whatever the fuck the hell is it called? Suzuki-gun, right? Like all of a sudden these people are champions. So it's like, and they have all these new Americans, these complete nobodies, Like I look at like the Wikipedia and it's like, oh, one of the tag team champions is some guy named Robbie Eagles. I've never heard of this guy and I have a feeling I'm never going to hear of him again. AEW would be better off doing like a tandem event with something like MLW, which I don't even watch, but I understand that it's getting big, in the indie, quasi-indie circuit, right? That would bring some new eyes to people that might actually become stars. So you know what I mean? If I tune into, I don't know, an AEW pay-per-view and I see that Hammerstone guy, right, who's a big, strong-looking dude who speaks English, right? I'm like, oh shit, this guy could be a big player in the future of my wrestling viewership, right? But if I go see Yoshihashi, it's like, what am I going to do now? Go get New Japan World to see Yoshihashi have his 20,000th meaningless match? No, nobody wants to see that, right? So it's not this huge win. Tony Khan, in my opinion, would even be better off doing it with TNA, right? You can actually have like a TNA versus AEW storyline, like a real one, you know? You can have an AEW versus MLW storyline, like a real one, right? They wouldn't be that good because nobody really gives a damn about any of these companies, but it'd be better than having it with New Japan, where there's like no reason to have it, right? Now, aside from the good matches here and there, it's also a negative in this sense, right? It's a negative because it will be a pay-per-view. It'll be like a placeholder pay-per-view. You know, like WWE used to have those like random ass like pay-per-views in like England or something, where it's like you would have like during that time William Regal was like an undercard wrestler, but he'd have like a prominent match, you know, because he's the hometown hero. Or when like WWE went to Italy once and like Nunzio became cruiserweight champion, even though Nunzio was like an undercard jobber. You know what I mean? It's like you have to have these like situations, right? And this prevents the development of actual storylines, which is the bread and butter of wrestling. Wrestling does not operate on good matches. It operates on good storytelling. And you cannot do good storytelling, right, with two companies from different countries. You just can't. It's not possible. The only way to do it would be like if someone says New Japan ain't shit, and then the New Japan people, they find someone that speaks English, and they're like, we're the best, you know, whatever. And that's it. That's like the most generic of storylines. That's all you can do. Other than like, we're going to have a competitive series of matches just to see who's better. Like, who gives a fuck? I don't care. Who cares if CM Punk is going to beat Okada or whatever they have. Right? Nobody cares, right? Nobody really gives a shit. So people are much more interested in seeing CM Punk have a storyline like he did with MJF or something, right? So this brings me to the real point. Tony Khan doesn't understand what he's doing, right? And this is evidenced not by this, but by other things as well. So Tony Khan is under the impression that for some reason, he knows wrestling, he understands wrestling, and that he is capable of doing all these wrestling-esque things that to him make sense, but to everyone else don't make sense, right? Like I heard that Jake Atlas apparently works for this company, right? They did like a whole thing, just like they did with Cedric Alexander in WWE, where he like wins a match, except it made more sense with Cedric Alexander because he lost his match in the Cruiserweight Classic or whatever, right? But he wins a match and then Tony Khan shakes his hand like he's impressed Tony Khan. Who gives a fuck? Of course he's impressed Tony Khan. Everyone impresses Tony Khan. It takes nothing to impress Tony Khan. All it takes is you one day work for WWE, right? I'm surprised that fucking Slapjack or whatever the hell his name was, Shane Thorne from Retribution isn't there yet. You know what I mean? Like everyone goes there. It's like they've hired everybody, man. It's like Isaiah Swerve Scott. This guy did absolutely nothing in WWE. He won like a cruiserweight title, but who or whatever, the North American, one of those bullshit titles. But who cares, right? All of a sudden he's there. He's teaming with Bearcat Lee, which makes perfect sense because it's two jobbers, right? And they will be treated as jobbers in AEW eventually as well. Same thing with Malachi Black. I said it from the beginning. Remember when people were like, oh, Malachi Black, he's reinvented himself. And I was one of the only people who said, wait a second, motherfucks. It's the same boring-ass Aleister Black. And I said it. You can find the videos, and I can quote myself. I said, in a few weeks, in a few months, this guy will be teaming up with Lance Archer, right? In a tag team. And yeah, I was wrong about Lance Archer, but that was hyperbole, right? They just found another Lance Archer to give him. Right? They found that Brody King guy. It's the same thing as Lance Archer, right? Lance Archer shows up like once every 3 months to get his ass kicked and leaves. Right? This guy's a jobber, you know, so he could have fit in just as well with them. And then Buddy Murphy, I haven't seen him on TV in like God knows how long, you know. Apparently he's there somewhere, but maybe I've missed all the segments with him. But it's like they keep adding like. In my language, in my culture, we have this expression that says you keep adding water and you keep adding flour, right? So you make this doughy mixture, right? But it's too doughy, so you add more flour. Now it's too dry, so you add more water. And you keep doing this process, just creating more shitty dough, right? The point is, proportionality is important. And it's important to understand when enough is enough, right? I understand. There are certain people that you need to get from WWE. People that typically are indie relevant, right? So like Adam Cole, Red Dragon, you can get them and put them and make Undisputed Era, right? Even though they just broke up like last 6 months in WWE, you can make them a group, right? There's a history of that group. You can use them. You can use them correctly, right? But to get Keith Lee, it's a complete waste of money. Why get Keith Lee? Just push one of the 50 guys that you have that don't get any TV time. Push Powerhouse Hobbs finally. You know what I'm saying? But they're finally pushing Wardlow, I guess, so that's okay, right? Push other people. Push Lance Archer. You know what I'm saying? Why do you need Keith Lee? You have Lance Archer, right? You have your own badass big guy, right? You don't need Keith Lee. You don't need Isaiah Swerve Scott. Push one of your jabrones. Pick one of those jobbers, Serpentico, I don't care. Put Serpentico in there. You don't need Isaiah Swerve Scott. He doesn't bring any prestige. He's not this big star that's going to draw eyeballs. Not one person, I would bet anything, not one person in the globe has said this sentence. You know what? I don't watch AEW, but now that Isaiah Swerve Scott is there, I'm going to watch every week. No one's ever said that. It's never going to happen. It's the same thing when they got Brody Lee. Everybody else, it's like, nope, these people don't draw, right? There are certain people that could draw or could at least be used, you know, well in the long term, like Undisputed Era. I mean, I hate to say it, but it's true, right? There's a few people like that, right? But it's like, when they invariably get Karrion Kross, right? When they invariably get Karrion Kross, what do you think is going to happen to Karrion Kross? What do you think Tony Khan and his business acumen and his ability to book wrestling matches are going to do? He's going to push it for a couple of weeks, and before you know it, he'll be in the House of Black. That's what's going to happen, motherfucks. That's what's going to happen, because nobody wants to see these guys. Nobody cares about these guys. They haven't drawn a dime in their lives, right? And the ones that do draw a dime, they're also incorrectly used, right? Christian should be a main eventer. You know, he can still go, obviously, right? He should be a main eventer, or at least take people under his wing in a serious manner. Not just a guy that hangs out with Jurassic Express who was already successful, but he should have like an Edge role. Like Edge is taking, like Damian Priest, he's lucky to be in this situation, right? He can now actually get a push based on his affiliation with Edge, right? You could do the same thing with Christian. You can find the next Christian. Let's say it was Joey Janela, or maybe Sammy Guevara. That would be a good one, right? Like a guy who's like, you know, undersized but works hard and is good, right? And you could push him like that. Instead, they just tack him in there. They got nothing to do with him, so they just tack him in there. Big Show, he's been for the company for like 2 years. He's had one match and he's done nothing else to earn any money. Mark Henry, he's done nothing to earn 1 cent. He's a backstage interviewer, but who cares? Put him with Powerhouse Hobbs, give Powerhouse Hobbs the world's strongest slam as a finishing move, and you have a star on your hands, right? William Regal, they're like, oh, let's put him with these two established wrestlers that are better than him, and let's throw in Wheeler Yuta in there, a guy who's never going to make it. You know, this is the kind of booking mentality that Tony Khan has, and this will bleed into this Forbidden Door nonsense, right? It's not going to work out well. You know, the first 4 or 5 matches in the card are going to be throwaway bullshit matches. You're going to have your obligatory, like, Sammy Guevara versus El Desperado. It's going to lead to nothing. Who cares who wins that match? You're going to have, like, I can predict the card. It's going to be like the mid-card champion, the TNT champion, and AEW. It's going to be them versus probably the junior heavyweight champion of New Japan, which I think now is El Desperado. Him versus Sammy Guevara, it's set in stone. You know what I'm saying? It's set in stone. It's going to happen. You're going to have the two champions wrestle. So it's going to be Okada, and probably as a result of the Forbidden Door making it predictable, I think CM Punk's going to be the champion. It's going to be Okada versus CM Punk. That's kind of a dream match. Then they can have Daniel Bryan and fucking what's-his-face, Ambrose, and maybe even throw in Wheeler Yuta and have them wrestle like a tandem or like a 3-man group of like equally relevant New Japan guys. Maybe it'll be like Naito versus Naito and Takahashi or whatever, like a few of those guys, right? It'll be something like that. You know, to kind of give Daniel Bryan like a moment to wrestle with someone that's like relevant, right? And then if they're smart, they're going to do none of these things and just have Jericho in the main event, but, you know, what are you going to do, right? So that's what I'm saying. There's nothing happening here that you have to look forward to. And for one of the few times in the history of AEW, there's a lot more to look forward to in AEW. You know what I mean? Like the Jericho Appreciation Society, right? I make fun of it, but the association, like, I want to see what happens with Wheeler Yuta. I predict that nothing's going to happen, right? You have all these factions, all these groups, all these people that are willing to step up. But how can they? How can they step up if part of the card needs to be given to some jabrones like FTR, or part of the card needs to be given to some jabron like Keith Lee or Isaiah Swerve Scott, or all these jobbers that nobody wants to see? Nobody wanted to see them there, and nobody wants to see them here, motherfucks. You know, why didn't big badass Keith Lee become the star that he was supposed to be? Why is he the Bearcat Keith Lee? I'll tell you why, motherfucks. Because eventually, the smarter people in the company, right? Not the jabros who are like, this guy has presence and charisma, right? The people that actually understand these things. Not Triple H. He doesn't get it at all, obviously, right? Which is odd because, you know, Triple H was never like the most charismatic guy, but he was around some of the most charismatic people of all time. So I guess he doesn't get it. Maybe he just feels like these people are more like me than The Rock. You know what I'm saying? But he became Keith Bearcat Lee because eventually Triple H was like, oh, this guy's great. He's going to be a world champion. Karrion Kross is great. He's going to be a world champion. And then Vince McMahon looked at him and said, this guy? This is the guy that you think is going to be a world champion? Get the fuck out of here. His name is now Bearcat Lee. He's got 2 weeks to impress me. And then when he didn't impress him, he got fired. It's as simple as that. That's obviously what happened, you know? There's levels to it. There's people like Vince McMahon that really understand. Like Vince McMahon understands, for example, that Austin Theory could be a star. He needs to work a little bit on his like mic work and everything like that, and he needs a better finishing move and all that other shit. But there is star power in this kid. You know, he looks the part, right? Keith Lee does not look the part. He doesn't act the part. He doesn't behave the part. He doesn't do anything correctly. You know, he's a good mid-carder to have, but they're not in the business of finding mid-carders. They got plenty of those. They got Dolph Ziggler and Robert Roode for days. You know, they can have Dolph Ziggler for another 10 years being a mid-carder, or The Miz, or people like that. They're looking for like a real star, and none of these people fit the bill. It's as simple as that. Nobody right now in NXT except for Braun Breaker fits the bill. And even Braun Breaker, it's not set in stone. He might fail, right? But sure as shit, nobody in New Japan fits the bill, as we've seen. right? So there's nothing to look forward to, right? Why? Oh, Okada. I want to see Okada wrestle in AEW. Why? You've seen him wrestle in ROH a million times. You've seen him wrestle in TNA, probably, definitely in TNA, as Okado, right? The ROH had a big working relationship with New Japan, and it led to nothing. Why would this be any different? Are we to believe that, like, you know, Adam Cole, when he was in ROH, is worse than he is now? Are we to believe that a tag team like the Briscoe brothers, who are obviously the best tag team in the world now, right? Are we to believe that they're lesser somehow than FTR, who's going to wrestle like one of their tag teams probably? No, motherfucks. Of course not. This is just smoke up the ass. That's what this is. This is a lie perpetuated by the fans and by Tony Khan and by Dave Meltzer. This is going to be presented as a big deal. I guarantee that this pay-per-view is going to be hailed and quote-unquote universally critically acclaimed. And I can guarantee, just as sure as the sky's blue, motherfucks, that I will not like it. I can already tell you, right? It's possible, I guess. It's possible, but I need some build-up and some storylines, right? We don't have enough of that, and we're going to have none of that with this. It's going to be like a placeholder pay-per-view, like that's sandwiched between one quasi-relevant pay-per-view and another quasi-relevant pay-per-view. And that's all we've got, motherfuckers, and that's all we've got. With that being said, this has been your boy, the Hater, telling you why Tony Khan sucks, both as a booker and as a businessman, at least in the context of wrestling. Maybe in the context of actual business, he's great. He might be great at like real estate or cars or whatever the fuck they do. Yeah, that's what I got to say about that. See you, motherfuckers.